I want to thank you guys and thank you, Andy, for the introduction. It was kind, a lot kinder than what I normally hear. I appreciate you guys asking me. I want you to know my bankers are here. My son-in-law's here. I have some friend employee that works with me at Refchem here, and I know quite a few of you, and some of you I don't know. It's pretty typical. I've been married to Georgia for a long time, 45 years. I do have, I guess what you'd say, typical family. I always thought my family where I grew up was normal until I got to be about 40, and I thought, man, there was nothing normal about us. And I guess that's what shaped me the most, especially knowing my dad. My dad was S.C. Myers, Jr. I inherited the name S.C. Myers III. Most people know me as Trey for a reason, because my first name is S. That's not the bad part. The bad part is when you're 5 years old and you introduce yourself to a bunch of 5-year-old boys as S.C. Myers III. And the problem with that is the third rhymes with something extremely close. It would fit in a Minions movie real well. So I immediately started searching for anything I could get a hold of, so they gave me the name Trey, which I've stuck with all this time until we got to 9/11, which at that point in time, you had to make out your tickets, so you'd put on their S. And they'd always come back and say, no, I'm sorry, your name has to have at least two letters in it. So what do? You know, it's not S period, it's just S. And that's on all your forms of ID also. And you go to get on the plane and TSI, they immediately look at you and say, is your name really SC? No, my name is S. Well, how do you spell that? And you don't say anything if you want to get on the plane. It's an argument that I still have today. And that's been a good number of years ago. And I even had one of them spell it ESSE. But if you don't mind, call me Trey. We'll all get along fine. I put this up on the board, up on the screen for you guys. It wasn't for your benefit. It's for mine, because these are my notes. And I don't like to stand still. I don't like to talk to any one individual. I like to turn and look to see what it is. And I usually will talk from bullet points. And the thing that you really will hate about all this is I'll get chasing rabbits, and I want to make sure that I respect your time, because I know we all have some place to be, including myself, not too far after we get through here. One of the things I want you to understand is I've been in the construction business probably since 17 years old. I left, went to Texas A&M as quickly as possible, swore up and down I'd never come back to West Texas. I was raised in Odessa along with my wife, born and raised. She was a veterinarian for 42 years. We both said we have no interest in ever coming back to West Texas. And we have no interest coming back to Odessa. God changes these things. And I can tell you that first thing I had to do when I got out of college was I had to start my own business, because nobody would hire me. There were no jobs in Waco, and that's where we settled in. And we were there 5 years, had a great job. It was my own company. I couldn't ask for better. But I got to looking around and noticing everybody else was closing the doors. So I went home one morning after I'd gone to work, as I normally would. I'd get up at 4 in the morning. I'd go up, get everybody ready, get them out on the jobs, and I'd go home and eat breakfast. When I went home that day, I noticed all the businesses that had closed, and I went and talked to my wife, and I said, look, we need to be praying about what's next, because this doesn't look good. And I'm not real sure where we're headed. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but we need to be sensitive about where God's calling us. 15 minutes later, while we're having breakfast, I get a phone call. And a man by the name of R.B. Hampton, who was the president of a company called Area Builders, called me and said, I need you, and I need you in Odessa Monday. And I had a business, a home, friends, church, everything you could imagine. That all had to be dealt with. And I said, well, I can be there in 2 weeks. I need you Monday. We shut everything down, sold the business, kept the land and building, kept the house, which we had to sell over the next month, and we moved to Odessa. Of all things, the one thing I didn't want to do. But I can tell you, this has been the greatest experience anybody could ever have in any time of life. Now, well, granted, that was not my vision, but it's still been great. I went to work for Area Builders. I built a good number of the buildings that you see out in the Cladesta area, including I was co-manager on Cladesta National Bank. I was the project manager for Midland Memorial Hospital, Dinero Plaza, Cornerstone Church for Dr. John Hagee and Diane San Antonio for many years, and then switched over and went to work for RevChem. I swore I'd never worked for RevChem. I called them Riff Raff. My boss doesn't know that, so I'd as soon you not know it. I was laying in the hospital with a broken leg, and I noticed the guy next to me was worse shape than I was, and the lady said, "Oh, he had an accident, and he works for RevChem." And I said, "Oh, I never worked for them." Another change in life. I'm in the construction business. My whole family's been in the construction business. I run engineering, construction, maintenance, EPC, however you want to call it, both here in Houston and all across the United States. We've been bought out by a company in Kansas City, Kansas, called with the name of Burns & McDonnell. We're a wholly owned subsidiary now, as of last week, with one of the Fortune 100 companies, and that's a new era in our careers as to what that means and where we're going. The big thing is we don't just build buildings, we don't just build pipelines, and vast majority in here are probably engineers. Now, I think at one time I've met everybody from jewelers, accountants, and everything in this meeting, and I can tell you that in all the things that I have to offer today, I have faith. And I can tell you also that I'm not in the construction business. I'm in the people business. We are in the people business, no matter how you want to shape it. We have to learn how to get the right people in the right place with the right skill sets, with the right attitudes, in the right locations, anywhere in the United States, to do something. And sometimes that's not easy. We've been talking just now about who are these people and everything and what kind of attitudes you have, whether or not they've got families. Try going on a job site where you've got a 999 crane and you've got a very critical lift that you have to make, and the guy that's going to crawl in that cab just had a fight with his wife and they're leaving each other. Is that the guy you want in that crane? Who's there to watch him? Who's there to look at him? Everything you see on this board is everything that I tell my managers everywhere in our company, no matter where they're out in the United States, and I try to do this personally. And I always start off with, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. I've never met anybody that's grown up. And if you realize it, you're all part of that. But one thing I was telling our table this morning is, who are you today? Because that's who you're going to be when you grow up. Because any point in your life when you ask that question, it's really, who am I today? Because you're never going to get to that point of what I want to be. And God's going to change it on you so many times. If you will just relax and live lives, things would be a lot more, you would be a lot more appreciative to what you get up to every morning. Everybody needs a story. How many of you have a story? Anybody got a story? You all are walking stories. My boss is the world's best at coming in and sitting across from me when he really wants to tear me up and say, let me tell you a story. Sounds calm at first. It's not calm whenever you get through. And if I didn't catch it the first time, he's going to retell me that story over and over and over until I get it. But we all have stories. We don't have time to tell all those stories. And each story is made up of a lot of little stories. But I got news for everybody. God's got a bigger story. And he's already told his story. He started it, he finished it. And whenever you get to that point of what do I want to be when I grow up, you're going to need to ask yourself, is God in my story? Or am I in God's story? And that's a big step. We all want to live our lives, but you're going to want to be in his story. You need a foundation. I don't care if you're a project manager, banker, friends, you need a foundation. It's hard for me to send somebody out on a project if I don't know what his foundation is. And that's not just skill sets. That's not just preparation. That's just not what he brings with him. But that's who he is with his family. That's who he is with his kids. That's who he is at church. That's who he is whenever he's dealing with the clients that I have. What is your foundation? What do you have to offer? Do you add value in everything and anything that you do? And are you prepared to give a defense for the hope that's within each one of you? They have to answer these questions to me before they get too far. Because the last thing I need is somebody that's got great credentials, but he's a loose cannon. You need a foundation, and you need to know what that foundation is. I'm privileged to be surrounded by godly men. We all don't go to the same church. We are all of different denominations, and I guarantee you, though, we all know how to pray over each other. We all know each other, and you need to pray daily. You need to pray without ceasing, as he says. I don't know what that means sometimes, but I can tell you that you can start praying, doze off, wake up, and you're still praying. Wake up in the morning, you're still praying, and you can find yourself praying. I was telling the guys yesterday that one of the things that was so unique about Billy Graham is whenever he would walk up to somebody and a woman came up and said, "This is what I've been through, and I need your prayers." And he said, "Young lady, I've been praying for you for 15 minutes while you've been talking." It's not where you go, how you do it. It's, are you in the faith to do the things that we know to do? And that's what brings us down to this point. Should I bring my faith to work with me? And I put out there, please do, because your sanity and ours depends on it. There is somebody looking for you every day. And there's somebody you're looking for every day. And the big key to all this is going to be stay in the present. Be mindful of those around you. You know, all my life, I was raised in a very fundamental, very, very works-driven church. A lot of that I've had to throw off to some extent, but a lot of it I loved. Every Monday night, we'd go down the street. I'm going to have you recognize that. We'd go down the street, you knock on every door, and you'd say, "Hey, do you know Jesus?" And if it was a woman, she'd say, "That is so sweet. I'm not interested." And the next thing would be if you got the man in the house, and he just slammed the door in your face, and what he said after that, you can't repeat. But that's pretty well what we ran into growing up in a lot of the early church when I was young. And I took that with me all the way into business to a great extent, to the point where I would feel guilty if I wasn't witnessing to somebody at all times. But it wasn't bearing any fruit of any kind. And so I would naturally go home and I'd get in an argument with God. And I'd say, this doesn't work. And I'm beginning to read and see where this doesn't work. Because I'm like anybody else would be. I want to do whatever pleases you. And I love you and I want to do what you want. He said, "Well, hey, just trust me. Just trust me." And I told him, I said, "I'm not witnessing again. If you want me to talk to somebody, you put them next to me. You put them on my side, you put them next to me, I'll do it. I'm prepared, but I'm not doing it." You ever get in those arguments? I drove to work the next morning and reminded him all the way to work, I'm not doing it. Don't ask me to do it. You got somebody, you prepare them for me. Walked in and sat down at my desk the way I normally would. It was quiet, it was early. 10 minutes later, my boss walks in. He's got his hand in his head, crying, saying, I need you, and I need you to talk to me now. I'm coming apart. I've been coming apart for weeks. I need somebody to talk to me about Christ. My attitude on that was, hallelujah, and that was a fluke. That really didn't happen. Got no work like that. So don't lose sight. You may be out trying to find people and look for people and being sensitive and all that, and the guy standing next to you is dying. Don't lose sight of those around us. I don't care if you're a project manager. I don't care if and it's your faith or it's your skill sets. Don't lose sight of the guy that's in the room with you at the moment. You need to be prepared. What good is it if somebody comes to you and says, can you tell me what's in you that I see that I need? Are you prepared to give a defense or an answer for the hope that's within each one of you? For those of you who are of faith, are you prepared? One of the slides up here, one of the answers up here said there's no room for anxiety. There's no room for anxiety. When a woman or a man comes into your office and sits down and they're bawling, they're crying, which happens quite often, do you have time? Are you prepared? Or you got to go somewhere else? When somebody comes in and says, I need you to pray with me, do you say, okay, I will? Or do you pray? I think sometimes that's where we miss. It's not always convenient to stop and pray for somebody, but it doesn't take long to get over in a corner somewhere. We're all too often saying, hey, don't worry about it. I'll pray for you. I'll get the guys together. We'll pray for you. You got to be prepared, guys. You got to live in the present. I always tell my guys, if you go hunting, if you're going to go deer hunting, hunt deer. If you've got a client in the car with you, and you're a truck with you, and you're out hunting deer, hunt deer. Alan and I, we've hunted deer I don't know how many years, but we've had some good conversations over hunting deer. And we've got into some pretty deep stuff hunting deer. It never fails. You get a man one-on-one with you in a car, and you're out there with him 8 straight hours, you're going to get into some deep discussions. Some of them are going to be about faith. Are you prepared in those circumstances, or is anxiety going to stop you in your tracks and kill the whole thing? One of the reasons God said, cast off all anxiety, give me all that, is because he knows what it'll do to you. We all suffer from it. I don't know of anybody that doesn't have anxiety. I have anxiety being up here speaking to you today, and I speak a lot to a lot of people. If I didn't know how to throw it off, I would have already told, and I would have told Andy, no, I'm sorry, I got something else to do on that date. My calendar's full, whatever. When somebody asks you to step forward, when somebody asks you to tell them something, are you prepared, and can you cast off the anxiety that's associated with it? You got to live in the present. You got to live in the present with your wife, and I tell this to every manager that I have, with your wife, with your children, with your employees. Are you in the present? When you're talking to somebody, are you looking at them, and are you listening to what they have to say, or are you trying to get them out of your office? When you go home at night, do you go home and you're quiet, or are you having a conversation with your wife? I guarantee that'll sneak up. Not to get personal, a lot of wives walk out because they feel like they're alone. You got to be in the present, and you may not be there. And that goes back to, who do I want to be? Who am I today? Surround yourself with people that are still trying. Some people give up. Don't surround your people with people that give up. Don't surround your people with the people that are going to be whispering other things in your ear. What is being whispered in your ear? Does it matter? I've got cancer. I've got one person over in this ear saying, you're stage 4, you've got blood cancer, your bone marrow is 60% gone, completely ate up with cancer. You got 6 broken ribs, you got a broken back, you got 2 broken vertebrae, you got a broken hip, and you need immediate blood transfusion, and your kidneys have failed. And he writes out a prescription and says, here's the prescriptions for 200 Darvon, 200 pain pills, and 200 sleeping pills. I am so sorry. That's whisper in your ear. And that's what you get. And that's not an unrealistic case. That happened. 3 days later, with the help of Danny Barker and his wife, they gave us some advice on how to get into MD Anderson. And after a couple of days of being out and going through all the things that I had to go through and the pain, I finally got to meet my oncologist, who happened to be in emergency room that day, that morning, when I was there for the first time in a year, because he doesn't do emergency work. He does research work. And he got shamed into being in there for about 2 hours as they wheeled me in. And he's the authority at MDA, John Hopkins, and the Mayo Clinic in research. He is now my oncologist because he was there the day I rolled in. You don't make that stuff up. And he said, I don't know how long you have to live, but you're not going to die of this. He said, so I don't know who's been whispering something in your ears, but I can explain to you, you're not dying of this. And that's going to be 6 years pretty quick. 6 years. It's been the best thing that's ever happened. It's probably the best thing that ever happened in my life, besides my wife. And my son-in-law, he's sitting here. You know, you got to surround yourself with people, the right people. I have Mickey here today. Mickey Wilson's we've worked together forever. And Alan. We talk about these things, and we encourage each other. We lift each other up in prayer and in word. That's important. I don't care if you're in project management. I don't care if you're just having a conversation with somebody. When a client's sitting across from you, it very well, you may think it's the end of the world, and he's fixing to eat you. I know when I was younger, I thought they were going to eat me. I've had guys stand up, and I've introduced them to a room full of men at Huntsman, and him pass out for fear and anger. Not anger, but anxiety. So, guys, you got to expect the unexpected. I'm going to tell you a story. It goes back whenever I was struggling a little bit. I'd already told God, no, I'm not doing it. You heard that story and the outcome of it. And I guess I didn't listen very good because I'm still arguing with him. There time to time I get in an argument because I don't understand, and I want to understand what's happening and where we're going and what we're doing. And I can tell you that I had to go downtown Pennsylvania. Another one of my clients up there, good friends of mine, and we share in the faith. It's when I found out that Pennsylvania people aren't going to hell. They are strong friends of mine. Now, it takes a little bit before you get to that point to where you can share that in the North compared to the South. But they share, and they're strong. They're very strong in the faith. But that day was not a good day. Back whenever we didn't do our own flights and we had a travel agent do all your flights for you and everything, I told her, I'd like to go, but I'd like to go as economical as possible. And we ended up having that same conversation later that afternoon when I was supposed to be in Allentown and I was in Baltimore, Maryland. It was a bad day. It was a horrid day. And I was on the phone with her saying, how did you do this? And she said, well, you said cheap. I said, well, I didn't say third world countries. And I'm sitting there, and I don't even know why I'm in Maryland. And it's not been good. And I don't even know who this airline is. But it was a 757. They called our names. We got on the plane. I said, is this thing full? Yeah, it's full. And I said, well, I can tell you one thing. I pray nobody sits next to me. And God, I'm not talking to anybody that sits next to me. I'm tired. I'm not happy. And you can't make me. But if somebody's got to sit there, I'd just as soon it be a small woman. You know, you get into that when you get on a plane. I don't want a big guy. I won't point anybody out in here. But I don't want a big guy. I want a little woman. Well, the plane filled up. This is a big plane. And I'm near the front, way up in the front. You have to come in about halfway back and go all the way to the front, unlike 737s where you come in. His plane was full. They closed the doors, and there's nobody sitting next to me. And I'm thinking, this is neat. Couldn't be better. I don't want anybody sitting by me anyway. And so I'm sitting here having this argument with God over an airline seat. And about that time, the door opens, and all I heard is, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. And we got all the way to the front, and I thought, there ain't but one seat up here. I've got that seat, and I don't know where this is going. And I looked up, and there's a young lady, and I thought, well, thank God it's a young lady. Even better, she was blind, she was deaf, and she couldn't speak. Now, not being morbid, but that's probably even better. So I had to get up, let her in, sit down beside me, and as we sat down to each other, I sat there, we took off, we were in the air, and as we were taking off, I looked over, and this young lady was white-knuckled on the seat. And I thought, you know, that's got to be tough to be, you can't speak, you can't see, you can't hear from birth. And I thought, that's unbelievable just to meet somebody like this, you know. How do you meet them? What do you do? How do you go about it? And whenever we were going up, and it just got more tense, and the plane got to shaking, I reached over and did the one thing you do not do to another woman on a plane, is reached over and grabbed her by the arm. And as I grabbed her by the arm, she immediately come unglued, came around on me and grabbed me by the hands. And she began to work her way all over my hands, my fingers, everything that I had, and settled in on this ring. I don't wear it often because of arthritis, but this ring my daughter gave me years ago. And it's a replica, supposedly, of Martin Luther's wedding band. And it tells a story. It tells the story of Christ. And I can tell you, she did all this and immediately went all over my face, hands. Everybody within 4 aisles of us was beginning to wonder kind of what was happening on the whole deal. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to communicate whatsoever. She reached in a box, pulled the box out, set it on her lap, opened it up, and on that box was an area where she could type in Braille, and the words would come across a pen across the top of that box. And as I would type on the other side of the box, it would come up in Braille and pass under her fingers. And the words out of her mouth, the words out of her fingers, however you want to look at it, well, she said, "You don't know me, and I don't know you. And I've never seen that ring before. Can you tell me something?" I said, "Well, all I can tell you is supposedly it's a replica of Martin Luther's wedding band, and it tells the story of Christ." And she said, "That's fabulous. Can I tell you the reason I'm here is to let you know that the same Spirit that's in me is working in you." Now, you can't make that stuff up. If you think that God's not in your lives, working in your lives, in your businesses, in every word that comes out of your mouth, as long as you don't have anxiety, as long as you can cast off anxiety, it's one of the biggest culprits that hits us all. Don't be anxious. Live your lives. Don't get upset because things don't go the way you want them to go. Don't lose focus because your vision is in one direction and He's taking you in another direction. I came back here 1981, swore I'd never come back. And I can tell you that this is the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Second thing would be cancer. Cancer can't do a lot to you. I hate to tell you. If you focus in on the death part, it can destroy you mentally. If you focus in on the peace part, by knowing God and by knowing His faith and having a foundation, it can't do anything. It can't crush you. It can't destroy your faith. It can't destroy your friendships. It can only give you more anxiety if you allow it over what's next. Andy and I were talking, if you ever meet somebody that's ever had cancer, dealt with it, after 2 or 3 years, you live in 2 or 3 years with every time there's an ache or a pain, you're saying, maybe it's back. Maybe it's back. And then you go back and you're reassured, maybe it is back. Maybe it is back. I can tell you, I laid in bed for 3 nights, and for 3 days, all I could tell myself was, I've always been told that where I'm going is far, far better than where I am. Why on earth would I have anxiety over dying? And a peace came over me that I don't understand, never understand it. I know where it came from, but I still don't understand it sometimes. That I had never understood about death. And you reconcile these things in your own heart. Now, whenever I woke up and my doctor said, you're not dying, I was pissed. I hate to say it with that words, but I was upset because I was ready. I don't know what God's got in. I don't know what He's got in store for me, but I can tell you that every morning when I get up, I look at it as if what is going to happen today, not what is going to happen next week, but what surprise is waiting for me today. Because every day it's a new surprise. Now, granted, you got to have plans. You got to have visions. You got to get on your jobs. You got to have papers. You got to put out the financials. You got to get money. You got to have cash flow. But in the middle of all that, what surprise is waiting for me today? Because there's a surprise waiting for you. You talk about living in the present. I went into a 7-Eleven one morning and asked a young lady behind the counter. We don't even know what they look like when we walk out. 9 times out of 10, you go in and buy anything you want, you don't even look at that person. But I stopped and asked her how she was doing. And she said, oh, I'm doing fine. I said, no. How are you doing? And she broke down bawling. And I had to go behind the counter and go off to the side with this young lady. There are people in your businesses, there are people in my businesses that have problems. And we all have problems. All God's children's got problems. And they're looking for you. They're looking for you to step up and say, here's the hope that I have within me. Let me visit. Let's just visit a minute. Throw off your anxiety. And I can tell you this, don't get ahead of your story. Don't get ahead of your story. Don't move so fast in life. Don't move so fast that you say, I've made it and I'm through. You're not through and you're never going to be through till it's over. There is no such thing as retirement. I wish there was some days. There's not. Don't get ahead of your story. Live life. Every day, live life and understand that there's a surprise waiting if you just open your eyes and look at the people that are close to you and see who they are. I can tell you that we're in the people business. There's no way to get around it. There's a lot of different kinds of people in this world. There's a lot of different characters, and there's a lot of them, they got bad attitudes. Or at least I think they do. But God loves them just as much as He loves me. And He always will. If I can keep that on my mind, then business is a breeze. People's the issue. Don't get ahead. Don't get ahead of God. Don't get ahead of what He's doing in your lives. Just live your lives. Have a good time. If you're going to go deer hunting, hunt deer. Just be prepared for what's fixing to happen while you're hunting deer. And enjoy yourselves. Thank you guys very much.